Good evening, class. For those of you who can't read, this is a trigger warning. This show contains snakes, demons, briefly, Germans, shirtless men, not very pretty ones, explosions, trauma. And Josh Groban, there seems to be a typo here. Sorry, that last one was redundant. It's still trauma. Oh, hello. Ding dang dong. Hallo meine Liebchen. Bienvenue and welcome to this flying bratwurst. I'm Bruno, your Berlin-born flight attendant, serving turbulence with a slice of side eye. You will say you better be paying attention. Because if you need anything today, just press the button. And if I'm in the mood, I will help you soon. The divine Brunhilde, direct from Valhalla and dressed in blue polyester, will be taking you through the demonstration. And I know you've all done your seatbelts already, but we have to show you how to do it again. It's part of the law, it's a drama. Please, this is my favorite part of the whole show. Please stow your bags overhead, put your phones on airplane mode, and place any small children under the seat in front of you. Or the overhead bin if they're bendy. I told you. If it zips, it fits. Tray tables up, attitudes down, and keep your hands off the crew unless you're rich, famous, or both. Exits are there, and in your poor life choices. Buckle up, Bruno's watching. Okay, so this is my real accent now. Hi. Some of you who read the program or bought tickets from the website will see that I mentioned latte art. I cut that for time, so I led you astray, and I apologize. Here's a condensed version of the joke, so that we can just get by it, and I don't not promise things, right? During the COVID lockdown, I was reminded how much I hate domestic chores, so I considered outsourcing. I'm not saying I'm bad at latte art, but even the demon I summoned couldn't do the ironing. Okay. I'm going to stand over here briefly, but I am going to walk around a bit, so please feel free to ignore me as I walk in front of the slides. They're all going to be just images with some text. It's really easy to watch me, unless you're the lighting person. My name is Randolph, and as you can tell by my hair, I'm an immigrant. I've been doing public speaking for many years, which is why we're doing the slideshow, because I'm terrible at remembering things unless I've got somebody on stage to work with, and I don't have anybody on stage. Shiloh knows all about that, so I may tell some jokes. I'm going to tell some stories. Some of the stories will be sad. Did you bring your tissues? Good. If there's time, I might do a dramatic reading of a popular song. I'm originally from South Africa, which explains my accent. I was born in 1976, the same year as Ryan Reynolds. He was born in October, I was born in December. It was a bumper year for my mother too. In October, she got married. In November, she turned 22. And in December, I was born. Shortest pregnancy on Catholic record. My mother is actually here tonight. Everybody say, hi, Rose. That's right, I'm Rosemary's baby. My father's family is from the UK, as is half of my mother's if you go back far enough, which means I'm so white, my Apple playlist is Wonderwall on repeat. When I dance, it's like the Mac startup sound. It takes people by surprise and they want it to stop. My performance resume literally says, do not ask Randolph to dance. What else? I like to swear. Yay. I do it industrial levels, right? So my mother's father was a sailor, that's my excuse. I don't need an excuse. I'm saltier, I wrote this down, I'm saltier than a pretzel that fell into the Dead Sea and got sun-dried next to a snail that got pickled in brine and then rolled into a salt lick shaped like Danielle Smith's face. I've also inherited the English tradition, I guess, of cooking, which means I consider mayonnaise a spice. And I literally have burned water. I will tell you about that later. My husband does all the cooking in our house, which is for the health and safety of all concerned, although a few months ago he did say to me, "You can fry something for breakfast, I believe in you." So yes, I grew up in Johannesburg, which means I flinch when the kettle clicks, but I relax best under barbed wire. It's not a city, it's a survival course with signage. You don't live in Johannesburg, you adapt. We didn't have security culture. This is one of my favorite lines here. We had crime couture. There were burglar bars in all the windows, and the doors were double locked, and we had security gates called trolley door. Isn't that cute? The guest toilet had panic buttons, and that's just not just if your in-laws were going to stay. And that's just the hardware. We also had wildlife. The neighbor had a mongoose with boundary issues, and one guy trained a guinea fowl to yell at Jehovah's Witnesses on principle. We didn't decorate so much as fortify, or you fell asleep to the hum of the electric fence like it was a white noise machine for the emotionally alert. Good night, darling. Did you lock the gate? Arm the beams. Brief the spiders. They're in position. And of course, load shedding, land blackouts. They did it on purpose. Because what's better than a national power grid with commitment issues? You'd be halfway through a toasted bagel, then boom, darkness. So I moved from South Africa to Canada with my husband in 2010. I was in my mid-30s, a cosmopolitan, international, overeducated gay with soft hands and a noisy brain. I didn't even know what Saskatchewan was. I thought it was a kind of infection. I'm sorry, you've tested positive for Saskatchewan. You may experience dryness, flatness, and an overwhelming urge to purchase a quad bike. I just remembered there's a camera filming this, so if I move around a lot, I apologize. We left Johannesburg in 2010, as I said, during a blackout at the airport. One last flicker of fluorescent lighting, and then, hello darkness, my old friend, now boarding at gate 4. Then, Toronto. Dry, understated horror. Oh, that was the stage direction, sorry. Toronto is what happens when white people are given too many zoning regulations. Compared to Johannesburg, it's clean, it's quiet, it looks like a spreadsheet, feels like decaf. We got kicked out of a bar once, and I say we got kicked out of a bar once. We were there the same day that we got kicked out of a bar, because my husband looked too young. This was 15 years ago, he still looks too young. Now, yes, he moisturizes, but he has a mortgage and the lifestyle of a count from Liechtenstein. But it didn't matter that he wasn't even drinking. Security still wanted us to leave because he didn't have any ID. We were escorted out, but I wasn't finished my drink. I had a half-finished Smirnoff Ice, and I said to the bouncer, I want a refund. Because if you're from Johannesburg, caroling Ontarians is like Pilates. Good response. I wasn't sure about that. Flash forward, we find ourselves in Lloydminster. If you've never heard of it, good. It's a town so rural it shares a border with Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's like divorced parents who can't afford separate holidays. It was fine. I mean, there were 4 Tim Hortons and a Starbucks, but there were more tractors than people. And they had a bowling alley. There was 5-pin bowling and a bar. One night, some bright spark says, we should go to the bar. And I, being from the big city, thought they said, a bar. I didn't hear the word the bar, and I had different things in my head. In Johannesburg, a bar has cocktails, ambient lighting, someone with a septum piercing crying in the toilets. But in Lloydminster, the bar is just a shed. Sticky floor, goose head on the wall. The kind of place where the beer is cold and the vibes are threatening. We have a good time, taking in the atmosphere. I mean, it's okay, a little cowboy. And then it starts. The music, well, I say music, I mean instruction. Everyone stands up like they've been summoned. I told you they weren't attractive. They start line dancing. I can't even do it, don't even ask me. No preamble, no announcements, just boots stomping and horrifying, communal, unison. And I think, okay, I don't think I can get away. I just need to walk calmly towards the door. But what no one tells the city gaze is that line dancers change direction. I'm halfway across the room when the entire line pivots, like a pack of synchronized prairie dogs, and I am in the path of destiny. I shuffle. I panic. I make eye contact with a man called Rick in bootcut Wranglers who smells like diesel. Unfinished business. And then I'm caught. There is no panic button. I'm old. This is going to take a while. No mongoose, just me on the floor. Boots all around me. Jesus Christ. I live here now. Why am I sticky? Jesus Christ. Why did I wear this? It's the hottest day in the week in the year, and I'm wearing full Highland dress. Anyway, that night rewired me. 2 years later, I'm doing a gig at the Calgary Zoo. The theme, après ski. I colored my hair green and purple, reaching for the sky like it's trying to speak to God. I wear an air of superiority and carry a clipboard I don't explain. And I become Klaus Wunderlift, a retired Olympic ski instructor, flammable, emotionally stiff. And when the moment comes, I call a line dance while singing Cotton Eye Joe. Live in German. Wo bist du hergekommen, Baumwollerin Joe? Wann bist du gegangen? Und warum tanzt du, Rick? Warum tanzt du immer? So yes, Johannesburg gave me reflexes, Toronto gave me rules, Lloydminster gave me choreography, and the Calgary Zoo gave me a warning. You don't survive the line dance, you become the line dance. That story's over. Oh God, now I have to undress. I knew that it would be too hot, so now I have to, you can tell I'm a computer person because now I have to flip over to this and undress in 2 minutes and 38 seconds and put something else on and keep you entertained at the same time. Wish me luck. Jesus Christ, this is hotter. Okay, this is back on. Hey, subtle transition. This is actually hotter than the other thing, so I may take the top off. But look at me, it's sparkling. I have a hat. I bought a hat. Calgary Stampede. Just one end of the brim is 10 inches wide, and it wouldn't have fitted in the car, so I didn't bring it. Where are we at? All right, I'm going to tell you an incident that happened to me before I met my husband. Before 9/11 happened. Who here was born after 9/11? Get out. If you grow up in Johannesburg, dodging muggers is just part of the package, but driving, that's where things get truly absurd. As a reminder, we drive on the right side of the road, which is the left side, not the wrong side of the road, which is the right side. Got that good? One of my favorite words, apart from Jesus fucking Christ, is shit. It's reliable. It's versatile. It's a duct tape of emotional expression. George Carlin said it best. Shit's a friendly word, which is perfect because I like to greet trauma by name. So it's August the 10th, 2001, a Friday. It was a sunny day. I went bowling. My Greek boyfriend at the time and I are driving up Jan Smuts Avenue in Craig Hall Park to our friend Squiggly's house for tea. Yes, I had a friend called Squiggly. I collect eccentrics like you collect Pokemon. I had the day of work, probably because the universe was stretching and cracking its neck, waiting to throw a car at me. I know that most of you have never been to South Africa and don't know where Jan Smuts Avenue. Doesn't matter, because it was this point in the story that we turned off Jan Smuts Avenue into Buckingham Avenue. Buckingham Avenue had speed bumps, which a criminology lecturer of mine called Dead Policeman. That lecturer was not a criminology lecturer, he was a con man. He didn't have a law degree and he lived out of the back of his car. South Africa. So Buckingham Avenue had speed bumps. The Greek was going 35 kilometers an hour, and I, being me, said, go faster, your car can handle it. You fucking German Audi. But I meant was 50, not 60, I mean, please, but maybe 55, but he declined. He was boring, irresponsible, sane. Life-threatening, as it turns out. As we got to the T-junction with Grosvenor Avenue, shut up, it's in the police report. I spotted a red VW Golf hurtling down the road towards the stop sign. I wrote this down because it was good. With the confidence of a toddler hopped up on sugar at a petting zoo. And I, the Cassandra of Craigle Park, said, shit. The Golf hit us on my side, because obviously, the door folded like cheap patio furniture. I always get this wrong. My seat shoved up against the Greeks. My glasses left my face like I owed somebody money. My phone launched itself into low Earth orbit. By the way, my window was closed before the car hit us. The car spun 360 degrees and then another 180. That makes a cool sound. All of this happened in the time it took me to say, Jesus fucking Christ. But I had enough gay theatricality to invoke the Lord our God, drawn by Leonardo da Vinci. By the way, this is my mother's picture. Side note, my mother has a print of a study that Leonardo did for the Last Supper, and this is one of the studies they did for Jesus. So we came to a stop on the opposite side of the road, facing the right way, because I may be a chaos muppet, but even my near-death experiences have aesthetic instincts. I climbed out of the hole where my door used to be, and saw the other driver jump out and run away. I yelled to the crowd that had immediately formed like ants on a dropped sausage roll, stop him, which they didn't. Meanwhile, I started feeling tender, neck, shoulders, ego. The cops and fire department showed up within minutes. How? This is Africa. We literally have a saying, this is Africa, which means nothing ever happens. There the cops were. Because, and I'm not making this up, a police helicopter saw the crash. Apparently, the man who hit us was getting away from an armed robbery. I had been accidentally recruited into a very low-budget plot of Die Hard. Anyway, an ambulance was summoned, and I was backboarded, neck braced, rolled onto my side like a disappointed hot dog. X-rays, severe whiplash, nothing broken. I wore a neck brace for 6 weeks, and I had a pride parade to organize. But that's not the end of the story, no, because this is my life. Sometime later, we were subpoenaed to appear in court. Not for the accident, no, that would make sense. We were witnesses to the armed robbery. We did a lineup. I identified the man who had hit us. He still had a bandage on his face. It was like CSI Johannesburg with bad lighting. The day court arrived, I wore my neck brace like it was a statement piece. The man in the dock wasn't even the guy who hit us. It was the mastermind of the whole crime, so I had no idea who he was. Prosecutor confirmed it before I was sworn in. So the judge says to me, "Why are you here?" I explained what happened. He says, "Nice neck brace." I say, "Thank you." Then he says, "Is this the man who drove into you?" Now, I like telling jokes. So I told the judge a joke. I told the municipal court judge a joke while I was still recovering from a serious car accident. I said, "Only if he's willing to jump out and run away, Your Honor." Fortunately, he laughed, as did everybody else. They realized I was wasting their time, so they let me go back to work. I never found out what happened to the real driver, but I did successfully sue the state, and I got 6 months of physiotherapy. They covered all my medical expenses, and they gave me a little bit of pain and suffering money, which for me is my Tuesday. Years later, I'm at a party, chatting to someone about weird shit, as one does in South Africa, because weird shit is like water. It's unreliable and omnipresent. And this man goes, "Do you know what's absolutely wild? I had a day off work one Friday, sitting outside of my deck, and there's a police helicopter, massive car accident, fire engines outside. Don't know what's going on, and I'm not sagely as my blood runs cold." He continues, "And then this guy with a face full of blood jumps over my wall, sprints through my backyard, and vaults the next one like it's the Olympics." I nod again and say, "Ah yes, the 10th of August, 2001. I smoked as his blood ran cold." Okay, this is going better than I thought. 23 minutes, we can do this. This is hot. All right, it's not just roads that have it into me. The kitchen conspires to... That is chicken, I think. Wrapped in bacon. I can never make anything like that. If it's not chicken, you can tell me, because I still don't know what I'm looking for. One evening in November 2017, my lovely husband made dinner before heading off to the hospital, where he does noble, important things, like saving human lives. The meal was chicken in red sauce. Unfortunately, the chicken was slightly undercooked, so I did what any self-respecting adult does in these circumstances. I nuked it. I forgot to cover the plate, and the chicken exploded. Red sauce went everywhere. If you've ever seen Game of Thrones and remember the Red Wedding episode, picture that with poultry. A tomato splattered crime scene inside my microwave. Absolute carnage. This microwave makes a comeback in another story, by the way. What's the story? Oh, funny me. After 20 minutes of scrubbing, I was only halfway done. My will to live was waning, my back hurt, and as history shows, and I will demonstrate in future tales, when Randolph gets bored, there should be an adult in the room. Tragically, my adult had gone to work the night shift. I was alone with an idea. So the sauce had fused to the side of the microwave like it had been fired in a kiln. So I did what any modern person does in a crisis. Anybody? I googled it. Boil soapy water in a microwave-safe bowl, they said. The steam will loosen the mess, they said. Easy wipe down. they said. I found a Pyrex bowl, microwave safe and transparent, perfect for a front row science experiment. I added water, a generous squirt of dishwashing soap, set the timer on the microwave to 4 minutes, and crouched in front of it, a suburban Prometheus waiting for fire. Now, I am an overeducated gay, I've already said that. I do know about superheated water. I taught high school children about the internet and they showed me things on rotten.com. I specifically remember thinking, there should be enough soap in the bowl to prevent thermal runaway. There was not. Yes, there's a dog at stake. She's still with us. I took her to the vet this morning. Just then, my Chihuahua Trixie joined me, as she always does when I'm at floor level, because she can't jump. She's a Chihuahua. She needs to be picked up. She climbed into my lap with an air of concerned supervision. She clearly felt the vibes were off. I turned my head from the microwave to the dog to reassure her that everything was okay. And as I turned my head away, the microwave exploded. My husband has heard what I'm about to say next. There's a sound you make when your brain is certain you're about to die. Mine is a sort of like a goose honking mid-panic attack. My husband heard that incidentally, this is not in the script, when I went home one evening thinking that he was still at work or whatever, and he had beaten me there to surprise me, and he didn't turn on any of the lights, and he appeared out of the darkness and said, "Hi." They made the same noise. Let's be clear, I definitively blew up the microwave this close to me. A sudden forceful redistribution of boiling water took place very close to my face. So you're asking, where are the burn marks? You must have a fabulous surgeon. The second thing is true, but I didn't get burnt. This was a fancy under-counter microwave oven with a drawer and a ratcheting slide instead of a swing-out door. It didn't concuss me, it didn't swing out, and I didn't get cut by broken glass. The drawer popped open the moment to died heroically, and the superheated geyser, or geyser if you're American, went up and sideways, but not into my eyes. Trixie was fine. Slightly judgy, but she's a Chihuahua. The bang was loud. It's the loudest bang I've ever had. But I still clapped my hands and shouted, "Move," because I have to do something to get my brain working again. Now, Trixie's been trained. If she hears "move," when she's still at hearing, when she hears "move," she runs away, because that's what she's been trained to do. So she obliged and gave me side-eye, again, because she's a Chihuahua, or a genetic defect. She never looks one direction. I regained just enough composure to stumble to the basement and flip the kitchen breakers, and returned upstairs to survey the scene. Now, I think you're all expecting a photograph, right? There are no photos. I may be an idiot, but I'm a dignified idiot. Soapy water was everywhere. Everywhere. On the cupboards, in the cupboards, on the walls, on the ceiling. I'm still unsure how much water actually fit into that bowl. For one breathless moment, I thought I had discovered the solution to drought in Africa. Miraculously, the Pyrex was still intact, no chips, no cracks, just a little leftover water. There was still water left in the bowl and in the microwave. I grabbed it with an oven mitt because I thought it would still be hot, and I put it into the sink like that scene from Back to the Future with plutonium. And then I started mopping. I just want to point out here that the mopping took just as long as trying to clean the microwave in the first place. But then I made my way back to the oven to see what the damage was like. And to my sardonic amusement, the explosion worked. One swipe of a cloth, and the inside of the microwave gleamed. From Dexter to spotless in every single. Later that week, a large straight man came to help me remove the microwave because look at these hands. My husband and I decided to look for a new replacement model, bearing in mind that we were about to move house a few months later, so we didn't want to splash out. But that microwave oven, they only had 1 in stock, and it was more than 1,500 Canadian dollars in 2017. So we found an Asian man in the back of a shop instead. It felt very Karate Kid, but for appliances. He replaced the drawer motor, dried out the internals, and had it back to us in 2 days fully working. It didn't cost $1,500. I paid my idiot tax and brought it home, and we sold the house a few months later. This is an actual photo of the kitchen. This was the microwave. I'd like to think the new owners really appreciated how much it shined. All right, what are we doing? Not warming up, but weight loss, right? If you think, I better get the wording right here because he drives home with me and sleeps in my bed. If you think appliances are unpredictable, wait until you meet my husband. I mentioned earlier that I married a doctor, which is as cool as it sounds. He's wealthy, attractive, and younger than me, so I've got someone to look after me. I'm shedding like my dog. When I introduced him to my mother, they're sitting together tonight. In 2005, at my sister's 21st birthday, my mother was actually worried he was younger than her. He teaches his colleagues, he attends conferences, and he heals the sick. Basically, he's Ginger Jesus. I worked hard on this line. We met online on one of those websites before smartphones were invented. It was called Gaydar, and you were lucky if you were looking at someone's face. What I loved about Marinus, that's his name, even back then, not Marinus, don't call him Marinus, I hate it. Marinus. Even back then was how different he was to anyone else I'd dated or been in a relationship with. He challenged my preconceptions about who I was and what I wanted in life. I still don't know, but at least I get to do it with him. Even that night after our first date, I went home and said to my housemate, may he rest in peace, dear Chris, that he wasn't my type. He wasn't Marinus because he was shorter than me, and he was a ginger. But I realized there was something there, which was unfortunate because I was planning to leave the country. True story. That year, my teaching job was going to end, and I had already spoken to my family. I was going to sell everything, settle my debts, and start over, but I stayed. That was a very long 4-hour phone call we had. And I'm so glad I did, because I get to tell you this story about a mime. Before we emigrated to Canada, we were shopping in Woolworths. Imagine Nordstrom in a committed relationship with both Marks and Spencer. On one memorable trip, we encountered a mime in yellow and red, no face paint. Or maybe a face paint, I wasn't looking at his face, because something happened. He had a waistcoat, tie, the whole works. He looked very well dressed. I have no idea what he was doing there, maybe a charity thing, but my husband decided to engage. Because this is being filmed, I'm only going to tell you one of these things that offends his sensibilities. 2 things offend Marinus' sensibilities. One of them is mimes. He says to me, I'm going to pull his pants down. And before I even process that sentence, he goes up behind the mime, who, to his credit, didn't emit the slightest sound during or after the incident that followed. Now you might be thinking to yourself, I wish I could do that. Let me be the first to disavow you of this train of thought. Pantsed mimes get angry. Fortunately, pulling up his trousers gave my husband a head start, which he desperately needed, because the most ridiculous chase I've ever seen in my life then took place. Imagine, if you will, 2 grown men running through a department store, the one in front giggling like a schoolgirl, and the one behind yelling without making a sound. That guy was committed. We escaped in haste, none the worse for wear, but next time you see a mime, please leave their pants on. Silence is not consent. Of course, we didn't learn our lesson because years later I was chased down the Champs-Élysées by an angry limo driver. True story. Look, all I'm saying is that we have a lot in common. And my mother's already laughing. And you'll see why. It turns out I've always been a little outside the flow, can you tell? Even as a child, the world had it in for me, especially in water. Water, for those foreigners around here. Let's go back to primary school. Ah yes, that special time in life, when your self-worth is directly proportional to your performance in front of 300 schoolchildren screaming at you while you look like a boiled sausage. So for today, I changed schools. I was the new kid. That already puts you one step below chewing gum in the social hierarchy. But then came the school swimming gala. And because God is so very real, it was compulsory. Now, I told the teacher, I told her that I couldn't swim. Not in a tee-hee, I might splash a little kind of way. I mean, I could flail like a Victorian child slipping into an icy lake. But this woman, this aquatic sadist with a whistle, said, just do the breaststroke. She might as well have told me to tap dance across the Atlantic Ocean. So there I am, tiny. I was very small for my age. Nose pitched like I'm diving into a vat of my own indecision. And I jump in. I start paddling. I don't know how to swim. I don't know the tube and kick. I start paddling like I'm fleeing a shark after the attack that took both my legs. My arms are now on fire. The other boys are already gone. They're halfway through drying their hair and I'm doing interpretive drowning. Around the 23-meter mark of the 24-meter pool, because irony loves precision, I begin to go under. And the crowd goes from, yay, to, oh no, which is the full emotional arc of my adolescence. Then Warren, bless him, probably in therapy now, jumps in and saves me. This is a true story. My mother was there to watch it. Warren, wherever you are, thank you for dragging my sudden gay future to the side of the pool. After this embarrassment, another teacher named Mrs. Prudence Nicholson, you'll notice I didn't name the aquatic sadist. I'm naming Prudence Nicholson, who's probably dead now, who deserves her own commemorative stamp, who taught me how to swim without dying. That woman was my queer water witch. She even showed me how to open my eyes underwater, which was wild because I was used to doing things blindly. Now, if you're wondering why my parents didn't teach me to swim, believe me, they tried. This is a picture of our swimming pool at home, with my brother posing in front of it. We had a pool. My brother could swim, my sister could swim. They were like smug little crocodiles just floating there. I, on the other hand, sank like Catholic guilt. My mother eventually did teach me how to swim in the ocean, which felt safer, you know. Waves, jellyfish, and the crushing knowledge of mortality. Which brings us to Hawaii, 2014. I went from drowning in the school pool to surviving in the Pacific Ocean. There we are, Maui 2014. My husband and I being the picture of tropical queer romance, but indoors, please. We rented a Mustang convertible. Well, I say we, but I did because somebody I worked with said that's what he wanted to do one day, and I contained no original thought. Our tour guide, Reginald, recommends the secluded beach, very private, very no one will bother you, wink, wink. And he's right, it's stunning, it's quiet, it's just the two of us, scattering of other people in the distance, the waves, and the slowly creeping sensation that I'm about to make a terrible choice. I go in for a swim. It's fun, I'm splashing about, because again, my mother taught me how to survive the ocean. Never turn your back. You're trying to get through a current, go sideways, you know the whole thing. And I think, how poetic, how healing, look at me, unafraid. And then it's getting darker, tide is coming in. A wave, roughly the size of a small planet, collapses on me like a 50-piece marching band falling down an escalator. Don't play with joke in this, please. But I remember my mother's training. Pinch your nose, let the water do what it wants. Don't fight it, surrender like a white boy on prom night. I tumble, I spin, I emerge alive, triumphant, glorious. And then I stand up and discover that I have enough sand in my swimsuit to rebuild the Middle East. Not just a little sand, not, ooh, exfoliation. This was topographical, there were layers. I was carrying the strata of Polynesia between my cheeks. Now, because the beach was so damn secluded, there were no rinse-off facilities. No taps, no showers, no island auntie with a hose pipe to hose me down, just us and my sand. So we started driving back. Remember the convertible? It's not very comfortable when you're sitting in sand. Halfway there, I turned to my husband and say, we have to stop, I have sand in my vagina. So we stop at a restaurant. It was probably fancy, but I have no recollection of what it was called or what we ate because I was full. I was distracted. I waddled into the disabled bathroom like somebody who's just lost an argument with a grain silo. You know, I've been in a lot of public restrooms in my life, not for that reason. And this was the first one I'd seen with a face cloth. So I often tell people I'm the luckiest person I know, but would I be lucky if I had been hit by a car and been covered in sand and all this weird stuff? Oh, I think, you know, whatever. But I'm in there bent over, face cloth in hand, whispering apologies to the volcano goddess. My husband and I tried to desand me like an old ham. And the best part is when we get back to the hotel, somebody says, you know, there was a nude beach like 500 meters away. I could have stripped and rinsed in the ocean. I could have been free. I could have air dried my dignity in the warm Pacific breeze. But no, instead I gave a public restroom face cloth the worst day of its life. This is an Easter egg. I've written this so that people who've seen the movie know what this is. You know, I hate sand. It's coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere. And because nobody laughed, that's from that horrible movie with Star Wars. Second prequel. Good one. Nice to circle the outlier, isn't it obvious I'm weird? All right. Show of hands, who's gay? Everyone who's gay say, hey! It's more than you think. Now, your hands should be raised because I've got a line that comes after that follows. So if your hands were up, put them up again. Keep them raised if you've been on a gay cruise. The big ones like RSVP, Atlantis, the floating circuit parties with lifeboats. Our first gay cruise was the Allure of the Seas, the biggest cruise ship in the world at the time by 2 inches. And if you know any gay people, 2 inches matters. No one got norovirus and only one person died. Those are good statistics. I'm not joking. It's not that gays party hard. We know they do, but at sea they party harder. But at sea they party harder. One cruise got boarded by US drug enforcement agents. People were arrested. Some of the cops were cute. But we didn't see much of that side of things because we kept to ourselves. The gay cruises give you colors to indicate your preferences. Green means you're a whore, orange means maybe, and red means no thank you. We wore red. On the most recent cruise, some married couples, one wore red and one wore green, which makes for interesting conversations. No one bothered us. There's enough room on board for every letter of the 2S LGBTQIA plus alphabet. Also, public service announcement. If you get queasy on any sort of vessel, skip the wristbands. Those are rubbish. Save the gravel for long drives through Manitoba. What you want is a scopolamine patch behind your ears. It works, it lasts about 3 days, so you swap it over halfway through. There are side effects. I mean, dry mouth, blurry vision, and constipation. But if you've met any gay people or British people, as it turns out, you'll know that the cure is vodka. Second favorite line coming up. No more dry mouth, double vision, or blockages of your natural passage. That's what I like that. We've seen some things on these cruises. Delightful things, shirtless things, better than that. I had my shoulders. Strange and beautiful things like Matt Yee, the late Matt Yee, a Royal Caribbean lounge singer who passed away a couple of years ago from cancer, but his show never changed, and that's why we went back. It was the same every time. He sang Hasadiga Ibawai, which I didn't know what it was because I'd never seen the Book of Mormon. Made us raise our glasses for 3 oys, and gave us that glorious feeling of belonging, of queer belonging. When I didn't feel like such an outlier. There's a lot to be said about being in the middle of the ocean with a boat full of your people. By the way, Virgin does adults-only cruises, no children at all, so I highly recommend it if you're into cruising. Even if you're not, no children. Leave them at home. Put them in the overhead. But that whole belonging thing, that queer belonging thing was very important to me, but there was something else that snapped into place earlier for me, much earlier, before you were born. Late 1990s. Show of hands who was born after 2000. No. I'm going to do that twice. I mentioned that I had a friend who was a surgeon. We were having dinner together, and he was spinning a coin on the table, and I could not take my eyes off that coin. That is South African money. That is a 2 rand coin. It's worth about 12 or 13 cents. But I couldn't look away from the spinning coin. He'd known me for years, but that was the first time he suggested that I should get tested for autism. And that's when everything clicked. I was queer, yes, and attracted to men. Not all men, don't flatter yourself. But this explained a lot more why I'd always felt like I was speaking the wrong language, why I have to read off a teleprompter, why I couldn't write but struggled to talk, why I could write but struggled to talk, you see. Why my father and I couldn't communicate at all. More on that later, kids. It was, as the kids say, a whole ass journey. I took part in a university study and landed in the 99th percentile. There is no 100th percentile. Very autistic. But few people believed me at first because I was high masking. Neurodivergent for the side of gifted. I had coping strategies. And still people thought I was strange. Funny that. Theatre kids excluded me. This is a joke, by the way. Theatre kids excluded me, debate kids pulled my hair, and chess kids made me sit by myself. This is true, though. Damien Drzezinski, who was in my school year, called me weird in the year. How rude is that? He's actually doing fine. I looked him up, and he's one of those people who's fine. You wish something bad had happened to them, right? The diagnosis explains so much. Back then it was still called Asperger's syndrome, which mostly meant white boys who read Wikipedia and interrupt you. But for me it was a lifeline. I had to work through what was autism and what was just being a dick. You can't just be a dick and be autistic. I had to learn when to explain, when to tone it down, when to walk away. It helped that I accidentally collected a bunch of other neuro-spicy people. We find each other like raccoons at a buffet. And then came the ADHD, because of course, autism wants to slow everything down. ADHD speeds everything up. Add in an eidetic memory. It's not a photographic memory, it's an eidetic memory. And I have one. It's chaotic. You miss the important moment in real time, but you remember it perfectly 3 weeks later and forever after. Do you want an example? Because I have a really, really sad story to tell you. I was in 8th grade at boarding school. The phone rings. I answered because we had to answer in 3 rings or else. Boarding school was fabulous. The woman asked for Brett, who was a prefect, and I checked in his room and he wasn't there. She says, please tell him to call home. It's urgent. I promise I will, and I mean it. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I forgot. It was fully, entirely gone. That night after roll call, I still remember all the 68 names by heart. Brett stands up. His father had died that day. His mother called the dorm. No one passed on the message. He wanted to know who answered the phone. I was as horrified as everyone else. What kind of sociopath forgets to pass on a message like that? 2 hours later in bed, I remembered it was me. So I walked to Brent's room and confessed. He didn't believe me. He thought somebody had put me up to it. Eventually, he understood that I wasn't lying. I just forgot. So, PSA, for those of you who know anybody in your life who has ADHD, if somebody forgets something and you say, well, it couldn't be that important, I promise you we wish it wasn't. So we're at 50 minutes. I don't have enough time to tell you all my stories, which I didn't expect to. So, do you want to hear about my father died or me sending a death threat? Well, talk about the death threat. Like any flight, life has its ups and downs. The next one story is not one of my favorite memories, but it's part of who I am. We'll start with a poor life choice. Water wasn't safe for me to be around, as I described it previously with swimming, but technology was even worse. And by the way, I work for Microsoft now. That's called irony. In the winter holiday of 1991, between changing high schools, between lives, I spent a long time with my friend, who we'll call the Belgian, because he was Belgian. We'd hang out, watch old films, and get up to mischief, mostly with pellet guns. He introduced me to two Italian actors called Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, not very Italian names, but if you look them up, you'll see that they were pretty popular. That's for another time. Aside from his day job, my father ran a small business from home selling something. Pipes. There were pipes and valves and things. It's actually written here, pipes. Thanks, Mom. He had a partner we called the Englishman because he was English. He worked from our study. His name was John. I didn't like him. He didn't like me. It was a professional arrangement. I was obsessed with electronics, and when I say obsessed, I would take them apart and not be able to put them back together again. But this time, I was obsessed with the answering machine, which I couldn't take apart. So when the Englishman wasn't there, I'd listen to the messages, write them down, delete them, because you know those audio cassettes get full. So you need to, erase messages. One day, I accidentally erased the greeting. And instead of walking away like a normal person, I re-recorded it with my voice. Prepubescent. Apparently, 14-year-old child answering business calls doesn't instill confidence. Who knew? I was also fascinated with the fax machine. Feed in paper, and it would duplicate itself across space and time like magic. One day, the Belgian was visiting. Remember him, kids? We gotten up to some mischief earlier with pellet guns. My brother still has some scars. But now we were watching TV. I got up to go to the toilet, and as I walked past the study, a fax arrived from a big company. A big company. They had a 7-story building. Ask me how I know. Just a boring price list. I was alone with an idea. I scribbled a message saying thanks and used the Englishman's initials and faxed it back. No response. I destroyed the evidence. Because what if the Englishman called me? I didn't care about anybody else. The Belgian came to find me, which is to say, Mother Dearest, in public, he was not involved. He was bored and wondering what I was up to. I told him I was about to send a fax to my mother, which I had to then follow through with because I don't tell lies. And off he went. After she received my fax, my mother phoned the house and told me to stop playing with the fax machine. I didn't listen. Nor did I figure out how she knew it was me. That's called foreshadowing. So I decided to send one more fax. I could say that it was a revenge fantasy for how the Englishman reacted when I deleted the greeting, but I still don't know why I did it. Just 7 words in block capitals across the whole page. You will all die within 24 hours. This is true. I wrote it with my right hand so that they couldn't identify my handwriting. On a fax! I didn't know about the phone number at the top. I was 14. It was meant as a joke. Nobody replied. I saw send successful and I thought I was a genius. And I forgot about it because have I told you I've got ADHD? My brain moved on completely, but here's the thing. Does anybody know South Africa's history in 1991? Nelson Mandela had just been released from prison. There were bomb threats that were part of daily life. Schools were evacuated often. We practiced fire drills and bomb drills. People were being killed Buildings were blown up. Domestic terrorism was real. And I, the unwitting, stupid child that I was, had just faxed a death threat to a 7-story building. My mother came home from work at her usual time. She took us to see Edward Scissorhands, which opened in South Africa that week. That is a fun fact for you. If you want to know the date of the second worst mistake in life, just look up when that movie opened. We dropped off the Belgian and came home. The earlier part of the day entirely forgotten. So when my father came home before the sun had gone down, I should have known there was a problem, because that never happened. He walked in, said nothing, called my mother into the study and closed the door. Then came the yelling, the kind of yelling that rearranges your internals. You know that yelling? He opened the door and shouted my name. I knew I was in trouble, but I couldn't actually remember why or what I'd done earlier that day. I thought it was about something else, something less catastrophic, like pellet guns. Instead, he shoved 2 stapled pages in my face, the thank you note and the death threat. And he said, "What the fuck is this?" No opening scene. It became very clear very quickly that I wasn't talking my way out of this one, and when I say clear, I mean painful, because that's when the beating happened. After the beating, I was told to write 3 apology letters, one to his partner, the Englishman, who I hated with all my heart and soul, one to the company I threatened, and one to my father. I didn't understand then why I had to, but now I do. While I was writing through tears, he turned to my mother, spoke in Afrikaans, my kryptonite. Fun fact, half of the white people in South Africa don't speak Afrikaans as a first language. I was one of them, until I married him. My mother drove me to the Randolph police station, which was coincidentally a couple of blocks from our house. Both of us were crying. She's still crying. And because the universe has a sense of humor and God is so very real, the station commander on duty was Belgian. He heard the story, he read the faxes, and told me calmly that if I were any older, I would have been in prison, not jail, prison, for 10 years. Then he took me to the holding cells to show me what that would have been like. Randburg had a reputation amongst white people. I don't know what it was like being a black person in South Africa, I can never know. It had a reputation of being the worst cells in the city, and I was inside for just a few minutes. I stood there scared, quiet, very small, and my mother and the station commander were just out of reach. When they finally let me out, I felt something inside me had changed, obviously. And the worst part was the disappointment from my grandmother, which hurt more than the beating. I still do stupid things, I really do, but now I think about the consequences. And I'm going to skip ahead to one of my favorite stories because I'm going to tell you this favorite story and not leave on a downer. Josh Groban or the snake?
Josh Groban.
Enough. I'm going to speed run this because I'm running out of time. Enough soul searching. Let's talk about something truly tragic. Josh fucking Groban. I realize a non-zero number of you are here tonight because you read the program and also dislike Josh Groban. Or you're at least Groban neutral. I, however, am not. Now this might come as a surprise to you, but my feelings have always been right there, just under the surface, like a hairline crack in a wine glass. Big show of hands, who here who isn't my husband likes Josh Groban? You're allowed to be wrong. In 2011, Josh Groban released an album called The Illuminations, which sounds less like a musical project and more like something Gwyneth Paltrow would sell in a jar. Then he went on tour. It was called Straight to You, which is exactly where I didn't want him going. My husband, sweet man, good taste in music, wanted to go to the concert. His colleague Marissa was also a fan, so we decided to make a trip of it. A little weekend getaway for my husband, Marissa, me, and Marissa's husband, Tommy, from Lloydminster to Edmonton. Because when you live in Lloydminster, Edmonton is culture. It's the Paris of central Alberta, even if what you're actually thinking is, let's go to Mordor, but with a mall. This was a highlight for anyone living in Lloydminster because buildings. The road between the two cities, sorry, I always laugh when I call Lloydminster a city. The road between them is a straight line, so you will fall asleep if you don't stop halfway there. And so we stopped at the Innisfree truck stop for coffee and a leg stretch. When we got to Edmonton, we had a nice dinner, then Tommy drove us to Rexall Place. Marissa and my husband got out and went inside, and Tommy and I sat in the parking lot. Now let me be very clear, I was never going inside. I love my husband. I drove to Edmonton for him. We once even shared a bathroom. but I will not sit through Josh Groban live. So Tommy and I stayed in the car, a very comfortable Audi Q7. Leather seats, rain pattering on the roof, heated because we're not animals. We sat there for 2.5 hours in the parking lot, and it was peaceful. So if anyone here knows Josh, and if by some miracle this reaches him, please tell him I've written down here. Closing comment, ladies, men, and other gender friends, as we prepare for landing, seatbelts fastened, trays locked, questionable life choices neatly tucked away. I just want to thank you for surviving this journey through flying bratwursts, moose-headed bars, exploding microwaves, mind chases, synchronized line dancing, gay drowning, facts-based terrorism, sand-based exfoliation, and the great cosmic injustice that is Josh Groban. Remember, if you leave here tonight and find yourself face-to-face with a mime, resist the urge to pants them. On behalf of Bruno, Brunhilde, and the glitter bomb I smuggled in my carry-on, Dankeschön, and drive fabulous, and don't worry, I'm still sticky.